Welcome to the Hockey Writers Sabres Scoop, a weekly show with our top Buffalo Sabres writing crew, bringing you the latest news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and much more. From training camp to the playoffs, from draft day to the trade deadline, our team covers everything that happens with the Sabres. So get a pen and paper and turn up the volume. You're about to get the Sabres Scoop. Sabres Scoop.
Welcome to Sabres Scoop, presented by the Hockey Writers, a once-a-week show covering all things Buffalo Sabres and NHL hockey. I'm here with my co-host, Jordan, who just got back from Ottawa from the Capital City Challenge, and you can talk about that a little bit before we hop into our Sabres talk, if you'd like. Any interesting updates, news, anything? Cool.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon, in case you're unfamiliar, this is a pretty unique thing that happened. Like, usually there's a world under 17 tournament that involves multiple countries. But since the pandemic shut that down, the Hockey Canada created something called the Capital City Challenge. And they basically broke their Team Canada into three groups: Team Canada Black, Team Canada White, Team Canada Red. And they even got the Canadian national women's team that will be representing the nation at the Beijing Olympics next year involved. So those four teams were in. I got to see a couple guys like Brayden Yager, who will be very high range picks, like top 10 picks in the 2023 NHL draft. And it was an exciting tournament to cover for sure. And being Buffalo Sabres fans, seeing how the team's doing, even in this game specifically, I'm paying attention to some of these guys because they might be joining our franchise soon,
Yeah, that's always good to keep an eye on for the future. But we got some stuff to talk about right now. So why don't we just hop into it? Big news today coming out of Buffalo, aside from the game that they should be finishing up right now, is that the Buffalo Sabres today traded for goaltender Malcolm Subban from the Chicago Blackhawks in exchange for future consideration. So this isn't a blockbuster by any means, but it is a new goalie on the roster, which is pretty significant in my opinion. So the Sabres finally got a goalie. It was said by Elliot Friedman on Twitter that the Sabres had apparently been searching around the league for a goalie, and they landed on Subban to fill the void that's been left by Craig Anderson, who has been out on IR for a while now. So now with Tokarski, Dell, and Subban on the roster, where do each of these goalies rank amongst each other in terms of organizational depth? And also, when Anderson comes back, where does he fit in?
Yeah, that's a very intriguing question there, Brandon, because Malcolm Subban hasn't even played in the NHL at all to start the season. He's played 5 games with the Rockford Ice Dogs in the American Hockey League, but it's presumably expected that he's going to be with the Buffalo Sabres immediately, right? So I'm putting them at one of those top 2 positions, and I would have to say, out of the guys that are left, it's probably going to be Aaron Dell. I know he's not exactly having the greatest night tonight. He appears to be a guy that has just a little bit more NHL experience. I would trust just a bit more before Craig Anderson comes back. And then eventually you can send both of those guys down. Maybe you're going to have to put them on waivers. So I don't know exactly what you do with them because you want to have UPL playing. But presumably it's going to be Craig Anderson and Malcolm Subban holding the fort in Buffalo. Curious to get your take on that.
Yeah, I would say eventually that's the plan. I mean, at least at some point during the season, probably toward the end of the season, I think that Anderson-Subban tandem is going to be what we see. Tokarski has been, I want to say hot and cold is a good way to describe it. He's had some huge games. I mean, he's had some 40-plus save games, and he's faced a lot of shots, but then he's had some real duds. And Aaron Dell, sort of the same thing. I think right now they're a stopgap, which is what we expected from them, but I would like to see Subban in action, which leads to my next question, really. Like you said, Subban has had a hard time staying in the league. He hasn't played in the NHL this season. Can we see himself really legitimizing himself as an NHL goaltender again as a member of the Sabres?
See, that's a tough question there, Brandon, because goalies can just flip their careers on a dime. But looking at like his best season is a 910 save percentage, which is decent. He was playing behind the Vegas Golden Knights, though, in 2017-18, during that magical year. So I don't know how much credit I get to that, considering in all the other seasons, he has either a 900 save percentage or less. So that's obviously not NHL quality, and is the main reason why he's in the AHL right now, assuming. So I just don't know. I don't know if it's really realistic because the Sabres presumably are also going to just be getting worse, as we get closer to the trade deadline. Players like Mark Pysyk probably are going to be moving on. They could get a ton of picks for some of these guys. So the team's only going to be getting worse. But like I said, with goalies, you never really know. I'm curious to get your take. Do you think there really is a chance here for Subban to rejuvenate his career in Buffalo?
It's hard to say. And I'm leaning towards saying no, but then I want to say never count him out because, I mean, like, just seeing how some goalies like you said, can flip their career on a dime. The guys have looked like they're out. I mean, you think of a guy like Devin Dubnyk, who looked like he was on his way into just fading away into the AHL and playing in the minors for the rest of his career. And then he gets, hot, and then he shows that he can be an NHL caliber goalie and a good one at that, starter. And you know that people have that potential. So I would certainly hope he can prove it, but I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. And a guy looking to prove it after how well he played last year when Don Granato took over. Casey Mittelstadt obviously had a brutal start to the season, sustaining that upper body injury that's kept him out the past 21 games. Looks like it's going so far, pretty well so far, because he does have a goal in tonight's game against the Florida Panthers. But we got to really talk about this a little bit more, got a deeper look here. He's sliding into that third line center role, skating between Rasmus Asplund, Zemgus Girgensons, who have both been effective players for the team this year. What do we think he really brings to this team? And how can he work his way back into that first line center slot where he was presumed to play at the start of the season?
Yeah, I'll answer the second question first. I will say he is definitely going to work his way back up to that first line center slot. I mean, he had a goal in tonight's game and his first game back from an upper body injury. He's missed a quarter of the season, and he already looks like he belongs right where he belongs. So I think he's definitely going to work his way up. He's going to have Cousins to compete with, but I think he can beat him out for that position. I think that he brings back just a lot of skill. I mean, he was scoring points like nobody's business toward the end of last season. He was pretty much point per game, or on pace to be point per game in the second half of the season under Don Granato's coaching. And so I think he fits really well with that system. I think he really had a breakout last season, and I was really looking forward to a true one this season. Hopefully, missing that amount of games, he can still get there. But I'm also interested to know what you think he can bring back as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because he did have 17 points in those final 22 games last season. But look at the tear that Dylan Cousins has just gone on. He currently has a goal and assist in tonight's game, 6 points in his last 6 games. He's really starting to look comfortable there, playing more and more minutes each night. I could see him really stepping up in that first line role. So if that happens, Mittelstadt presumably is probably going to end up being your second line center. And if they can finish the year off like that, with Cousins number 1, Mittelstadt number 2, and both are actually playing above expectations, or for Mittelstadt playing at that same rate he was last year, they're going to be in a very good position moving forward. And yeah, we're talking about all of these guys, coming out of the lineup as a healthy scratch to make room for Mittelstadt is Anders Bjork, who everybody knows was traded, involved in that Taylor Hall trade at last year's trade deadline. He only has 3 goals on the season, but pretty disappointing, honestly, in general. He had a decent little start there, a little stretch of games, but over the longer sample size, he hasn't really looked much like an NHL player. And he's on the Buffalo Sabres, so I know it doesn't really help, but if you're not in the NHL lineup for the Sabres and you're getting scratched over other guys, it's not really the best look. So curious to get your take there, Brandon. Where do we see Bjork fitting into this lineup, especially with players coming back from injury?
Yeah, it's tough to place him. And I mean, this comes as players are being called up and they're stepping up. Look at Brett Murray, who has scored 3 points in 4 games. Not sure he has a point tonight. He actually might be a healthy scratch, but he's been playing really well. And he's someone who I thought should make the opening night roster. You're seeing guys like Arttu Ruotsalainen be sent down to the Amherst. And now Anders Bjork comes out as a healthy scratch. It just goes to show that the players who are getting it done are really being rewarded right now. And that's sort of how Don Granato is running this team. If you're playing well and you're a guy like Dylan Cousins, who you said has really been proving himself, you're going to be rewarded with the playing time. And it's a firing on all cylinders type of roster right now, rolling 4 lines. And if Anders Bjork isn't contributing, I mean, his goals came back way early in the season. He hasn't scored a point in what seems like forever. So maybe it'll be a wake-up call to him, because he is supposed to be a shoo-in on this roster. Maybe this will be a wake-up call. I hope it is, because he can bring a lot. He just hasn't been lately.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And you reminded me of the Ruotsalainen being sent down. Now you're making me sad, but he obviously needed that. But for Bjork, I have to hope at some point he can work his way back into this lineup. He obviously is. They're going to be trading guys out, like a guy like Vinny Hinostroza. I don't really know if he's staying past the trade deadline, if they can acquire some sort of draft capital. So there's going to be space for him, but he also has to prove that he belongs in the NHL lineup. He has to, I remember that Bjork, Ruotsalainen, Cousins line looked really good during their early sample size. He needs to find a fit somewhere else, though, because when you're not getting that second line time, if you can't adapt to a bottom 6 role, you're just not going to be on the NHL team.
Definitely agree. In the same vein of Mittelstadt's return, another player has also started skating, this one being Alex Tuch. He started skating in a non-contact jersey with the Sabres during practice, and he looks like he's on track to make his Sabres debut sooner than later. Probably a little bit after Christmas into the new year, mid-January maybe is when he's projected. Sabres fans have waited what seems like a long time since the Eichel trade. It hasn't really been that long, but it seems like a long time to see what they got in return. And Alex Tuch is just one piece of this deal, Peyton Krebs being the other big one right now. But he's, of course, with the Amherst in the AHL. Where do we think Tuch is going to fit in when he does join the Sabres lineup? And what kind of impact is he going to have? Is he going to be playing alongside Mittelstadt, Cousins? Is he going to be in the top six, presumably special teams time? Where is he going to go?
Well, I did see the article you posted actually yesterday on this very topic on where these guys could fit. And honestly, I could see Alex Tuch taking a spot immediately on the Sabres first line. I could see him playing potentially next to either Casey Mittelstadt or Dylan Cousins as the center, maybe even Jeff Skinner as the left wing. I could see that being the first line moving forward. And I could see that being a pretty good first line, because Alex Tuch's an interesting player. Looking at the micro stats, he seems like a guy that, is a pretty higher end second line player in the league. We have him locked up. And if you put him in a real first line role, because in Vegas, he was behind the likes of Mark Stone, Max Pacioretty, he wasn't really getting the first line ice time. So at Buffalo, this could be a chance here. And you've seen it with some players. He could just completely break out and become an elite player, or maybe he'll just stay what he has been, his current trajectory in his career. But I would move Hinostroza down to the third line, and that would end up taking John Hayden out, who's the third line red winger. So definitely makes your team better having Alex Tuch on it.
I definitely agree. Yeah. And I mean, just look at how well Vinny Hinostroza has played. And Alex Tuch is a guy who I think, as in terms of raw skill and talent and scoring ability, definitely brings a lot more. And he can help drive a line as a bigger guy. So Tuch, only just imagine what he can do. I'm really excited for him. With that being said, let's reset the show here. You are watching Sabres Scoop presented by the Hockey Writers. Make sure to subscribe to and like our show on YouTube and catch all the great hockey content on thehockeywriters.com. And on our Twitter feed, you can follow us at Sabres Scoop THW and find everything else there. Hopping into some general NHL news. This used to be Sabres news because we're talking about Jack Eichel. Now it's no longer Sabres news. This is Vegas Golden Knights news. Jack Eichel is back on the ice skating with his new team, the Golden Knights, less than 3 weeks after having artificial disc replacement surgery. This one feels like a gut punch. Eichel said the rehab process, you're working out probably a week to 10 days post-operation. This is in an interview with NHL Network just last month. It's not like you're doing a workout with heavy weights or anything, but you're able to move around. Hopefully in 6 weeks, I'll be able to get back on the ice and start skating. And I'm hoping around 12 weeks, 3 months, I'll be back playing. That has rang true because he's back on the ice. Seeing how well this recovery has gone, how does this make us feel? Did the Sabres do the wrong thing by not allowing the player to get the surgery he wanted? I know hindsight's 2020, but this is a tough one to grapple with.
Oh, like this is an easy question. Of course, the Sabres were wrong here. Like the Sabres, obvious. I mean, everybody could tell you that the Sabres should allow him to get this surgery. I don't know if that means he would still be a Buffalo Sabre at this moment. I think the relationship would probably already stagnated there, because it just kind of seemed like that. But then he could have been a Vegas Golden Knight in the summer. There's a chance he could have even gotten more back for him, and he would have avoided this whole process. But ultimately, that's the route they chose to go. And I'm just happy for Jack Eichel out of all of this, because, had he had that fusion surgery, he wouldn't be skating right now. I can tell you that. So it's nice to see this happening. The Olympics for him, I don't really know if that's really going to end up happening, him playing for Team USA, unless they make it to the gold medal game, which obviously could decent chance that could happen. Maybe they'll use him at the end there, but it's nice to see it going well for him. And I'm just glad that he's hopefully going to be helping and playing NHL games for one of the best teams in the NHL very soon.
Yeah, I think Golden Knights fans are going to be in for a treat when he comes back, and they're going to start getting all their guys back, and they're going to play like one of the best teams in the NHL, like you just said. And Sabres fans are just going to have to watch, but happy for the player. I'm glad there's no complications. I'm glad it went well, and we'll see how it goes.
But do you think the Sabres should have given him the surgery earlier?
Yeah, I think it would have been better
in general.
For all parties involved. I think it would have been better if they, we argued both sides of it, or we tried to understand both sides of this. Our fans who have listened to every episode definitely know that we've covered all angles. I understand where the Sabres were coming from and their caution, but ultimately I think it cost them a lot. I think it cost them, it was a giant headache. It was a huge problem. And I think it cost them some, draft capital, some better return. So it definitely did not help.
They're talking about a giant headache here. Well, wait until you get a load of this. The Nashville Predators and the Tampa Bay Lightning released their jerseys for the Stadium Series that they're playing in next year. What do we think of these designs as they currently are making their way through social media right now, and not in a good way for one particular franchise? That's right. I'm talking about the Nashville Predators jersey that came out. Pekka Rinne actually unveiled it in a press conference. It has the Smashville on there. A very weird look. It looks like, I just designed that in 5 minutes on Photoshop. It's a very weird design. I'm curious just to get your thoughts there, Brandon, because even like the font they use, like it's different size. There's a lot. It's just weird.
It is weird. And I get they got to come up with new things because they had their last stadium series jersey that was not great either, at least in my opinion. A lot of people liked it. It was just the cursive script. This one is, I think, objectively speaking, is really not good. I mean, it's just weird. They have that guitar pick with the 3 stars in the middle, and then it says Smashville, 2 separate lines. There's a lot going on. Man, it's really something. And I will say though, it's kind of like the Islanders fisherman jersey where you're going to see a lot of people in 25 years wearing this unironically, and it's going to be a collector's item. So it's going to be one of those things. The Tampa Bay one isn't nearly as bad, but it's also not the best.
I actually don't mind it. I don't mind necessarily how it looks. Yeah, it kind of looks a little amateurish, but it's a decent design. And I think when you actually see players wearing that on the ice during the outdoor game, it'll look a lot better too.
Yeah, definitely. What are your thoughts on the jerseys? Where would you rank them in terms of all time, at least most controversial jerseys? Because there's a lot.
I know there's a lot making their ways around. Obviously, we got the Team Canada Olympic jerseys, which I don't like. The New Jersey Devils jerseys that just got unveiled to a couple of weeks ago. Those aren't that great, but this Nashville Smashville jersey, I should say, it's probably the worst jersey to ever be made in the 105-year history of the National Hockey League. I will be putting that out there. I think I'm not the only one. I've been seeing that on Twitter. I actually don't mind the fact that they put Smashville. I think they could have made a better design. I actually don't mind that it says Smashville. I think they could have made that a bit better. They could have made it more prominent because that's obviously a cool thing, but they kind of screwed it up completely, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that one. There's a team out there that has a world-renowned, beloved jersey. That's the Kachina jersey. We're moving on to the Arizona Coyotes. That's the jersey they currently wear, went back to. Most people love it. But we're talking about a franchise problem with them right now. A Forbes article today claimed that the Arizona Coyotes were on the verge of being sold with the intention that the arena would be relocated to Houston, Texas, and that's where the team would reside moving forward. Since then, Craig Morgan and multiple sources within the organization have stated these claims are false. THW's very own Patrick Brown, who covers the Coyotes, and he's done a fantastic job of covering all this arena drama. He really has. Go back and read it. He also believes that this is the case, that it's false, and that these claims are not true. So he believes the team will stay now. That's what all indicators are pointing to. Let's 2 questions, break this up into 2 questions. Do you think there's any merit? Because I feel like this has been harped on for years and years and years that the Coyotes are moving elsewhere. Houston's the next American city people think it's going to go to. Quebec City is also always in the conversation. Do we think the team should move to Houston or stay in Arizona?
That's a tough one, man. Like I feel for all the Arizona fans there, looking at even the players it's been able to produce, like Austin Matthews obviously grew up watching the Coyotes. Same with Matthew Tkachuk. It would be really tough to see them actually move. And with Gary Bettman during his tenure, he doesn't want this team to move, but they don't have an arena to play in. It's obviously not going to happen too soon, but it seems like Houston could be a better market. There's 7 million people that live in Houston, so you're probably going to be able to get more seats if you put it in a decent spot. That's obviously something that the current arena has going against it. Like it's not in a great spot at all, and they just haven't been able to work it out. So I don't necessarily know if it would be better, but because I want to see the game still grow in Arizona, but I could see it also making sense going to Houston. I'm curious to get your take on there. What side are you on?
Yeah, I mean, there's people out there who argue you wouldn't get Austin Matthews if you didn't have the Arizona Coyotes or the Phoenix Coyotes when he was growing up. So, I mean, it's that argument, right? I mean, you've seen how hockey has grown in places where people never thought it could be played. There's 3 California teams that have all been wildly successful in terms of getting fans in their arenas and doing well, competing for Stanley Cups every year. They're all going through their own sort of mini rebuilds, but they're getting back there. And then Arizona Coyotes, that's a team that's never really been able to get the traction, but they have had good teams. They had that conference finals run in 2012 when they were selling out their arenas against the LA Kings. They almost made it all the way. They've had some really good players, and I think they could have a bright future. It's just, it all comes down to the ownership. They have never really had stable ownership. They've had a lot of, intra-team controversy and, with their staff and stuff like that. And they've never really been able to figure it out, but I really hope they do. Cause, as someone who comes from California, that it's important, I think, to keep those teams stable and continue to grow the game there.
Definitely, for sure. I agree with everything you're saying. And just talking about the second part here, like, what do we really think? Are we really taking the team side here where they're saying, it's definitely no merit to what the Forbes article is saying? Or do you think the writer for the Forbes that reported on this earlier today, do you think he just made that up? Like, it's hard for me to believe this is just coming out of nowhere.
It's definitely not coming out of nowhere. I mean, I know I'm switching sports here, but go back to the mid-90s when the Cleveland Browns were still the old Cleveland Browns, and their owner said he would never dream of moving the team, and then he moved the team to Baltimore. I mean, it happens, it happens. They say things in the public, and then behind closed doors, there's things going on. So I think there's definitely some conversations being had. I mean, why else would an article be written about it? But again, there are bad leads, and sometimes maybe stuff is untrue that you think is true. So I mean, it's for us to find out at a later time, and maybe we never will. But I gotta hope that the Coyotes are gonna stable up their ownership and continue to thrive in the desert.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope they can make it work as well. And just one last little note here. I want to give a shout out to Anton Forsberg, who probably, I think, should have been a Buffalo Sabres goalie. He was available. He was on waivers like 3 times last year. He currently just saved 47 of 49 shots, and Ottawa beat the Carolina Hurricanes 3-2, his former team. That's a guy who I think really should have been a Sabre at one point, and stopping 47 of 49. I just want to give a little shout out there to Anton Forsberg because I think he deserves it.
Awesome. Always love goalie shout outs. That's a good note to end on. So with that being said, let's wrap up the show here. We thank you for joining us. This has been Sabres Scoop presented by the Hockey Writers. Make sure to subscribe to and like our show on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at Sabres Scoop THW. And once again, make sure you head over to morningskate.io to sign up for our daily Morning Skate newsletter so you don't miss the latest and weirdest hockey news every day. Don't miss out on all of the great hockey content on thehockeywriters.com. For Jordan, this is Brandon, and this has been Sabres Scoop. Until next time.